Good morning. This is Barry Bryson, and I'm thanking you again for joining me for another 5 good minutes in the Word. I'm getting a lot of comments that my 5 good minutes are sometimes spill over into 6.5 minutes, and I'll try to keep them under 5. Of course, I'm sure in those 6.5 minute spots, only about 5 of those minutes are your time anyway. So I don't know that I'm not delivering as promised. So anyway, thank you for joining me. We are still talking about our encountering Jesus, and we're transitioning a bit. Some of these encounters that we'll be talking about in the next series are with Jesus, but some are with Paul as well. But we're going to stick to talking about characters. I wanted us to think about centurions. We meet several in the New Testament. Some of them are named, some are not. Some of them play a prominent role. Some of them are supporting players on the stage, and yet are nonetheless important in the activity. And every one of them seems to be a really good man. It was a centurion who was the first convert, Gentile convert to Christianity in Acts chapter 10, Cornelius, of course. And that involves Peter, not Jesus or Paul. We'll be talking about Cornelius. And then there was there was the centurion whose servant Jesus healed right after he delivered the Sermon on the Mount. We'll be talking about him. And the comment that Jesus makes about that man's faith. There's the centurion, the two centurions, I should say, who escort Paul to Caesarea whenever his life is threatened. In fact, there's a centurion dispatched to rescue Paul from mob violence at the temple, and we'll talk about those guys as well. It was a centurion at the cross who delivered the line in Luke chapter 23 and verse 47, when that it says, when the centurion saw what had happened when Jesus' crucifixion and the aftermath, he began praising God and saying, certainly this man was innocent. They're an interesting group of men, these centurions. They're part of the Roman army, the heart of the Roman army, the backbone of the Roman army. All the contemporary writers say that about these men. We think of a centurion because of the name centurion, as being in charge of 100 men, but generally they were in charge of many more, as many as 600 or even more men. They were not of the equestrian class. They did not have to be, at least during Jesus' time, the time of the New Testament, they did not have to be citizens in order to serve as centurions. If you signed up to be a centurion, if you signed up, you had to sign up for 20-year service in the military. You were a foot soldier. You did not ride a horse. You did not advance beyond being a centurion. You were not a commissioned officer. In other words, that's as high as you would go. You made the agreement during those 20 years not to marry, not to purchase property, to live on. You were dedicating your life to the army, which doesn't mean that men who were in long postings didn't have companions, long-term companions, or maybe even father children, but you were not to marry, establish a household, establish a family while you were a centurion. The army was your family. You signed up for 20 years. But at the end of those 20 years, if you survived those 20 years, and most did not, you received an amazing retirement, property, a home, and a pension upon which you could live the rest of your life. In wonderful cities like Philippi, which was a retirement community for centurions and retired government workers. In the New Testament, every one of these men we meet are professional. They do their job, and they think in those terms. They're very matter of fact, and yet they're men of great faith. They come to the rescue. They're men who sense exactly the truth of a situation, like the centurion at the cross did. Well, tomorrow we're going to talk about the centurion servant and Jesus healing that man's servant. It's an amazing account. Thank you for joining us for 5 good minutes, and we'll talk about Jesus and the centurion tomorrow.